my bird who goes everywhere with me to my readings and things and events. Only if I'm the featured person though. If it's a panel with other people, then he stays home. He has standards. He got caught by security this time around too. He had to be swabbed. He was not happy, but here he is. So my whole name is Malavan Nistangaral Hamilagi Valigotham Ratnam Freeman. Mercifully shortened to Freeman for the lot of you, which means I'm never going to get a job here. I was very sad, like, little preference. Please contribute to the APR, since I'm just supposed to put a little plug in here. Literature is such an important way to inhabit worlds in the privacy of your own mind, which I think is one of the critical ways in which we change how we think about things. Nobody's standing there watching you read. You can just read anything. You can read things by people you hate. And nobody's judging you, but you can change your mind about many things that way. So I think literature, more than anything, particularly now, is a vital part of transformation in the United States and here. So please give generously. He's going to put a tin out there. See how sweet. I want to read a little section called Nihil's Secret, and it's sort of in the earlier parts of the book, and it introduces a connection between Nihil, who's one of the 4 children that moves into this neighborhood, Salma Lane, and Sana, so Nihil comes from this very nice family. Sana is a kind of a ne'er-do-well child of another family that lives there and would like to do more with this family but doesn't really know how, and is kind of dismissed by pretty much everybody in the neighborhood and in the surrounding areas. You don't really have to pay attention too much to all these names. Just listen for the feel of what I'm going to say. Okay, it's called Nihil's Secret. I thought it's a good piece to read again because of where we find ourselves right now and how little changes can do a lot of good or bad, depending on where you go. Nihil's Secret. As a way of ritualizing his visit to Mr. Niles, Nihil observed the same routine. These are very small children, so he's going to Mr. Niles because his sister takes piano lessons there. Mr. Niles is very old. He sent Devi in for her lesson with a little push between her shoulder blades, then walked over to Mr. Niles, silently counting the handkerchiefs remaining in the stack on the floor next to the old man. The fewer the handkerchiefs, the deeper the sighs. Then he would sit on a chair and read while waiting for Mr. Niles' breathy acknowledgement of his arrival. Sometimes Mr. Niles would ask him about school, about the world outside, about his parents, but mostly he remained silent. It was not until much later, when the weight of those sighs fell more gently upon him, and only after nights of careful consideration, that Nihil felt that he could share his keep-for-himself secret. He waited until Mr. Niles had finished his meager contortion toward him before speaking into a silence punctuated by his sister Devi's jerky F-sharp major scale. "I can say any word backwards," he said. "I can sing songs, recite poems, write sentences, all backwards, like this. Instead of singing, my body lies over the ocean, I can sing it like this. Naeso echt reo sail eno yem." He sang the line and smiled at Mr. Niles. "Good," Mr. Niles said, though he did not smile. A tear escaped from his eye, and he dabbed at it with a worn white handkerchief, which had a light grey line running around the borders. "Kased gnerub echt no duts yub echt," Nihil recited. The boy stood on the burning deck. This time Mr. Niles smiled. "So you read other things besides those hardy boys' books you keep appearing with?" Nihil nodded. "I read poetry," he said. Mr. Niles raised his eyebrows. "What is your favorite poem?" he asked. "Oh, Captain, my Captain," Nihil said, without a second thought, the rest of the first lines of the poem flooding his head even as he named the title. "Whitman," Mr. Niles said, nodding. "Abraham Lincoln. War." He gazed for a while at Nihil, who sat attentively before him, wondering why his favorite poem, rather than his backward recitation, had caught Mr. Niles' imagination. Celebrations at the end of a war are still marred by the memory of the dead, he said. Nihil, whose preoccupations were so close to his heart and to his physical being, Devi uppermost among them, did not understand. He had learned to recite the poem with great feeling, his XC of the rhyme scheme clear in his delivery, his "the ship has weathered every rack, the prize we sought is won," arriving with uplifted voice and bright eyes, his "rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills," full of pleading, and his "fallen, cold and dead," uttered with the requisite tone of bitterness and sorrow. But all of it was learned art, not felt art, for none of the realities that the poem spoke of, and which resonated with generations since, were realities Nihil could understand. Mr. Niles, on the other hand, to whom the newspapers were read each day, who listened to the radio in English and Tamil each day, grew quiet as he contemplated the poem in light of the things he had recently heard. For weeks now, there had been fresh reports of tension in the north with the assassination of Tamil leaders who were standing up to the LTTE and Prabhakaran. These murders were mentioned alongside references to tension in the halls of parliament where the Marxists were up against the Sinhalese chauvinists and where the Tamil leaders were caught between a rock and a hard place, neither wishing to support the terrorist group led by Prabhakaran, nor able to wrest any assurances from the government regarding the status of the Tamil citizens whom they represented. Added to all this, there was also bleak and non-specific references to tension among policemen, their previous sense of trust in their fellow officers weakened by the spectre of racial loyalties. In print and on the airwaves, several dates were mentioned: 1956, 1958, 1977. It was as if these were the only years that counted, as if the rest of the years meant nothing. What had happened to the things that truly mattered? The New Year's, Diwalis, veils, and Christmases for which the entire country had come to a halt had lightened everybody's spirits. Where was the country in which there were purchases of new school books with their fresh and promising scent, a scent that children like Nihil inhaled, breathing deeply, eyes shut as they imagined a new grade, a new teacher, new possibilities? Did anybody make the happy journeys between the steady beaches of his childhood in Pasikuda and the crashing surfs on the other side of the country in Hambantota? What had happened to the country with its parades and cricket matches and its joyful marriage of church bell and the call to prayer, its soothing chants of pirit wrapping around minaret, steeple, and stupa alike? That country seemed to have fallen silent, taking all its traditions with it, for the newspapers and radio mentioned only those dates that referred to episodes of violence and upheaval, when ordinary people became extraordinarily angry, when they wielded machete, knife, and fire, as though murder and arson were the norm and not the exception. Yes, war, Mr. Niles said. Nobody ever wins. And he said nothing more until it was time for Nihil to take Devi home and return for his own lesson. The next time Nihil arrived, however, he was rewarded both with a heartening stack of handkerchiefs. Mr. Niles was clearly doing well, and an immediate greeting. So those backward lines, he began, you are saying each word backwards, but also each sentence, am I right? You could then begin the song or the poem with the last word and work back to the start, I suppose. I could, Nihil said, frowning a little. I've only done lines so far, but I suppose I could do it from the very end. Then I'd have to picture the whole poem in front of me to see what I'm saying. Mr. Niles raised his eyebrows. So you see the words as you're speaking or singing? I have to see them, otherwise I don't know how they are spelled. I have to pronounce each letter, which means I have to see each letter. Remarkable, Mr. Niles said, the middle finger of his left hand drawing circles on the red cement as he said it, again and then again. Remarkable, remarkable. During his following visit, Mr. Niles handed him 2 books. The Twain book was the first I bought with my own money, he said. The second one, Harper Lee, that one was sent to me by a friend who left back in 1958 to live in America. I don't know if there are other copies of it anywhere in this country. Nihil sat and examined the books, Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird. He had read an abridged version of the former and liked it well enough, but not as much as he liked the mysteries he preferred. He thought he might begin with the second. The one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience, Mr. Niles said. Best sentence I have ever read. Nihil held it up to his nose and flipped the pages of the book. The air that brushed his face seemed to be speaking to him with a scent of cinnamon and camphor. He wondered where Mr. Niles had stored the book. He turned to the last page of the book. Gnirum et mi pa de quamit mem eret et da na, he said. And he'd be there when Jem waked up in the morning. Mr. Niles laughed. Son, you need to learn how to listen to the story as it's told. Start from the beginning, read to the end. That is how you learn the reasons for the way things are. Nihil too laughed. I will, he promised. I just wanted you to show how I see words sometimes. What else do you see, Mr. Niles asked him. Nothing, Nihil said, putting the books on the floor beside him. That's all I can see, words. He felt slightly crestfallen that his remarkable skill had been so swiftly set among prior accomplishments and that new work was expected. You see other things, son, Mr. Niles said, squinting at him. You just don't call it seeing. You call it knowing. Am I right? Nihil said nothing. The hesitant notes produced by his sister's fingers picking out the first notes of a simple allegro filled the silent air suddenly loud. He wondered if she had improved since the last time, or whether he was simply willing that she had. She should practice more, he thought. Maybe he would draw up a timetable for them. Study time, cricket time, piano practice, all evenly spaced between lunch and dinner. Then again, would the studies have to be broken down by subject or just amorphous time? Would they do the required work if she were left to her own devices, just a block of time and instructions to finish homework? Besides, cricket would soon give away to the kites, and that would not be controlled by timetables, only by the quality of the winds. And he knew she would want to follow the boys when they started flying those kites, tagging along and begging to hold the strings. She would not know how to twist those strings back and forth, and in the end, their kite would be stolen by the slum boys, who would send their fighter kite to bring it down. All the neighborhood children would blame her and begin to resent her. Better that he kept her home, even if it meant that he too would not be able to participate in the flying. She needs to practice more, Mr. Niles said, gesturing slightly toward the inner room from which the music escaped, startling Nihil. And you need to think about the things you know so you can tell me when you come back next week. How did Mr. Niles know that he could sense what the future held? Nihil mulled over this question as he walked back home alone after his own lesson. Did it show on his face? Had his older brother or sister told Mr. Niles of the way his fears overwhelmed him? What exactly had they said? He was so deep in thought that he walked past his house and almost to the end of the road and would have kept on walking had Sana not stopped him. Going to buy bread? Sana asked Nihil. Sana did not know why such civil words had sprung to his lips. Perhaps it was because first his misshapen uncle and then his idiot sisters had been embraced by the Herat family. Perhaps he felt there was room in that circle for him too. Nihil, no? Younger one, going to buy bread? Nihil had never gone to buy bread in his life, and with his head full of Mr. Niles' question, he did not understand at first what Sana was talking about. He cocked his head and considered what Sana had said. Bread? He finally asked. Yemen, bread, palm, and Sana laughed. I don't have any bread, Nihil told him. If Sana had not been wearing a shirt over his jeans, Nihil may have been frightened by the sight up close of the skull and crossbones drawn into his forearm in ballpoint pen, and the blood-dripping head held by its hair in a fist, which an acquaintance of his had painted onto his entire back using mehendi, stealing the henna from his own sister. But all Nihil could see was Sana looking simply unkempt and a little rakish, asking him about bread. Sana's smile left his face, albeit slowly, as though regretting both its own disappearance and its having ventured forth. You laughing at me? Sana asked. No, I'm not laughing, Nihil said. You asked if I have bread. I don't have bread. I didn't ask if you have bread. I asked if you were going to buy bread, Sana clarified. Nihil, now fully within the conversation, smiled disarmingly. Oh, I didn't hear you properly. I was thinking about something else. He ran his fingers through his hair sheepishly. I was on my way home and I didn't even realize that I had passed the gate and walked all the way here. He looked back up the road at the distance he had walked and then again at Sana. Good thing you stopped me. Otherwise, I might have kept on walking all the way to the main road. A bus rounded the corner at a tear, and after it passed, Nihil said, "Imagine, I might have even got hit by a bus. Good thing you were here." What grace there is to give, if only the giver knew that they had the privilege of bestowing it. What grace is often given without intention. Good thing you stopped me, good thing you were there. The word good had never been applied to Sana. No sentence that contained that word had ever also contained his name. Nobody had thanked him for anything he had ever said or done. No thanks had been deserved, but perhaps on some long ago occasion, before he had developed the knots and twists that hurt him from within, surely he had deserved one word of grace. Sana frowned and pressed his lips together to quieten the odd softening he felt within him. He stared at Nihil, who was still shaking his head at his own foolishness and smiling, now staring at the street where the bus had gone, now looking back at Sana. There he stood, a good boy from a good home, where doing nothing was a choice, not a predicament. A boy who was coming from a piano lesson on his way to a house where he did not have to be sent to dodge buses and drunkards on the way to buy bread. Good thing you stopped me, good thing you were there. Sana squared his shoulders and strode up to Nihil, who stood a head shorter than him, still holding on to his easy piano sonatas and music theory workbook, and his freshly sharpened black and yellow striped Staedtler pencil and his soft Staedtler eraser. He placed his hands on either side of Nihil's shoulders and bent down. "Don't walk like that again," he said. "Next time, what if I'm not here? You might go straight and hit the bus. Thinking and walking you cannot do at the same time." He ruffled Nihil's hair and straightened up. Nihil, his hair now disheveled and standing up, grinned. I know, he said. He looked at his sandals, then looked up at Sana. "I can say things backwards," he said, wanting to reward Sana for his narrow escape. Sana straightened up. "Backwards? Why?" "Kased Kneru et no dutsio best," Nihil said. That means the boy stood on the burning deck. "Why he standing like that?" Sana asked, leaning back and crossing his arms over his chest. He pulled his chin into his neck and looked skeptical. "It's a poem about a boy who drowned with his burning ship because his father couldn't hear him. Casabianca." "Tell again?" "Kased Kneru et no dutsio best." "Here, I'll write it for you, then you'll see." Nihil handed all but the music theory book to Sana, then turned to the back of his theory book and took out a scrap of paper. Balancing it on the books in Sana's hands, his head bowed, he wrote in capital letters, "Kased Kneru et no dutsio best." Then he handed the paper to Sana. "What to do with this?" Sana asked. "Nothing, just keep it," Nihil said. And then, because such moments were not unusual in his life, nor momentous, he turned to go. Sana did not know if he wanted to stay, did not know what they might have talked about had he lingered a while longer, and most of all, he did not know what he could say to make Nihil stay, so he just called out, "Be careful next time," as Nihil half turned and waved. Bobby Roberts, Sana's father, only heard those words as he approached the door to his house, swearing about something. By the time he came out, Nihil had broken into a run. He watched him for a few moments, then turned to Sana and said, "You pick someone your own age to fight with. Why are you picking small fry like that?" Sana said nothing. He put the piece of paper in his pocket and went back inside to lie down and think about boys on burning decks, about Nihil, about that word, good. That night at dinner, while everybody chattered about school and friends, they passed around warm loaves of steamed bread and dipped their fingers in fish curry and sambal. Nihil was quiet. He was too afraid to mention that he had escaped being hit by a bus, and there was no way to speak of Sana and his good work without referring to the circumstances. In private, while he did not tell Devi the exact details of the story, he substituted some unknown boy for himself. He talked to her at great length about the dangers of daydreaming when walking down not only their street, but any street at any time. "Buses could hit you," he said, and felt satisfied that she seemed suitably impressed with the dangers that awaited people who weren't paying attention.